All right, so we left off with Lucid LJS. What are your top five Samoa Joe matches? I'd probably say Joe versus AJ versus Daniels from Unbreakable, Joe versus CM Punk from Joe versus Punk 2. I'm trying to think of some rare ones. I like Joe versus Bryan Danielson from Midnight Express Reunion. I thought that was great. Joe versus Aries from Final Battle 2004. That was awesome. And probably I like Joe versus Saban from No Surrender 2005. That was great. Joe versus Christian from Bound for Glory 2007, another great match. So those are some old Joe matches right there that everyone should check out. All right, next question is from Executioner 110. He asked Bryan Danielson versus Shawn Michaels, who would win? Well, I don't know. I think if Bryan Danielson and Shawn Michaels had a match today, if Shawn was still winning, I would think that he would be nice enough to put over Bryan Danielson. You know, Danielson was actually went to a Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy in Texas, so I think it would have been cool to see Danielson make Shawn Michaels tap out with the Academy mutilation to win the match. Thought that would have been fine. It would have been an epic match, but it's never going to happen though. So next up is from Megalomaniac. He asked, "How long have you been going to ROH shows, and what was your first live show?" I started going to Ring of Honor shows in December of 2007. I went to the Rising Above 2007 pay-per-view. That was my first show, and then I was went the very next night to Final Battle 2007. So those are my first Ring of Honor shows. So I've been going almost about 3 years now. So next question is from The Breakdown. The Breakdown asks, do you think that the CM Punk Samoa Joe trilogy in ROH is overrated? Personally, I would not have given any of those matches 5 stars. You know, yeah, a lot of people do say this from time to time, and I kind of thought the same thing at first. You know, the first Ring of Honor DVD I bought was Joe versus Punk 2. I liked the match, but I was kind of like, you know, a little bit of me was saying, you know, is this really that big of a deal? Why is this match so great? But I think you really have to know the importance of Samoa Joe's title reign, how he was so unbeatable, how he was going through everyone. He was just built up as this monster, unstoppable champion. I think if you watch the shows in order and follow the company as it was happening, you would have appreciated it a little bit more. It just worked though, and the actual match was very, very fast paced, very hard hitting, a lot of awesome spots, great crowds. I thought it was an amazing trilogy. I do think they do deserve 5 stars. If you watch, like I said, if you know the history of the company and you watch them all in chronological order, I think you probably would appreciate it a little bit more than you do right now. So that was the breakdown that question. All right, next up is from Black Forest Mystic 420. He asked, what are your top 5 ROH shows of all time? Probably go Club of Honor 5 Night 2, Better Than Our Best, Super Card of Honor 3, Manhattan Mayhem, and Final Battle 2006. I think it's up there too. So, all right. So number 2, do you prefer Joe versus Punk or Nigel versus Danielson? I would actually say Joe versus Punk. I think Joe versus Punk did a lot more for Ring of Honor. If it wasn't for Joe versus Punk, they would have been out of business. And plus, they haven't had as many matches as Joe and Punk. Nigel and Danielson has kind of been done to death to a degree, so I'll probably say Joe and Punk. Do you prefer American Wolves or the Briscoes? I'd actually prefer the American Wolves. I think American Wolves are a better tag team overall. They're 2 better wrestlers. I think the Briscoes have a better identity. And I think, you know, it was a debatable question. I think the Briscoes in 2007 versus the American Wolves in 2009 would be a great comparison. You know, Briscoes have kind of slowed down a little bit, but they're still a great team. But slightly, I say the American Wolves are a better team right now. They could get a better match out of a weaker tag team than the Briscoes can. Like, they could carry the Dark City Fight Club to a better match without a doubt. So, top 5 ROH matches of all time. All right, really quickly, I'll go Danielson versus Kenta from Club of Honor 592. Danielson versus Nigel from Unified. Duke Fixer versus Blood Generation from Super Card of Honor. The original Dragon Gate 6-man match. I think that's up there. Bryan Danielson versus Roderick Strong from Vendetta. Nigel versus Aries from Rising Above 2007. That's definitely up there. Man Up, the Ladder War with the Briscoes versus Kevin Steen, El Generico. Trying to think of something from earlier on. I like Joe versus Aries. Joe versus Aries from Final Battle 2004. And of course, Joe versus Punk. Punk 2 is definitely up there as well. And I'll give you a sleeper, though. Let me think of a sleeper that should be noteworthy. I'll think of something early, actually. I think Homicide versus Carino, bitter friends, different enemies too. I think that's a good choice right there. So, all right, top 5 worst pay-per-views of all time. I'll just stick to WWE. My top 5 worst WWE pay-per-views that I've seen were probably Great American Bash 2004, No Way Out 2005, Cyber Sunday 2006, ECW December to Dismember, and Judgment Day 2007. The next question was from Tommy99 Triple H. She asked, his first question was, what's your top 10 ROH DVDs of all time? I mean, I pretty much just talked about this. You know, I'd probably say Man Up, Final Battle 2006, Supercard of Honor 3, Supercard of Honor 1, you know, Glory of Honor 592, Better Than Our Best. I mean, you know, pretty much know what it is. Next, he asked, what's your favorite wrestling DVDs? I assume you mean like WWE DVD compilations. I love the Jericho DVD. The Jericho DVD was awesome. The Rise and Fall of ECW was a great documentary. Shawn Michaels' Heartbreak and Triumph was a great documentary. As far as like overall, you know, a great wrestling set from top to bottom as far as match quality goes, I'd probably say the Ric Flair DVD. The first one was great. Chris Bell, I don't know. Benoit's could have been a lot better. I mean, the DVDs really didn't get a lot better till like maybe 2006, 2007. So there you go. What's your top 5 WWE and TNA pay-per-views? All right, top 5 from TNA. Obviously, you got to go Unbreakable 05, Bound for Glory 07, Bound for Glory 08. Was great. Trying to think, you know, 2005 is kind of overrated actually. I like Sacrifice 2007. I really love that show. Turning Point 2009 is a great one. I don't even have the show on DVD, but I'll probably say No Surrender 2005 was great. Final Resolution 2005, a little bit overrated, but I can see why some people like that. So those would be it from top 5 from the WWE. You know, obviously WrestleMania 20, SummerSlam. I said WrestleMania. I meant WrestleMania 19. Actually, WrestleMania 20. I put that in there as well. SummerSlam 2002, obviously. I like Fully Loaded 2000. That's probably like one of the best pay-per-views from like the non-Big 5 shows that I really liked. I like No Mercy 2002. I thought that was great. King of the Ring 1998. As far as pay-per-views from the late 90s, that was a great one from the late 90s. I had never saw Canadian Stampede in its entirety though. I like Vengeance of 2003. That's a great one. So, I mean, that's pretty much it for now. Backlash 2007 is probably the most underrated recent WWE pay-per-view that I'd probably say. Alright, next question is from Joseph Frigsby. What are your top 3 matches from every decade since the 80s? Alright, so from the 80s, I'll probably just say all the Flair Steamboat matches. You know, the trilogy, the Chi-Town Rumble, the Clash of Champions, and then the Wrestle War match. I'll probably say that. I haven't seen a lot from the 80s, I'll be honest with you. Top 3 matches from the 90s. Probably Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, the Iron Man match. This is probably just going to be WWE. I mean, I've seen the Misawa tag match from '94, the Misawa versus Kawada match, but I really want to rewatch those matches again before I start throwing them at you. Yeah, Shawn versus Bret, the Iron Man match. I love that match. I like Bret versus Owen from WrestleMania 10. Trying to think of something different off the top of my head. Shawn Michaels. I'm trying to think of a Shawn Michaels match. Shawn Michaels versus British Bulldog from King of the Ring '96. Underrated. I wouldn't put it in my top 3, but you know, I'll probably say Bret versus Austin from WrestleMania 13, or Shawn versus Taker from the Hell in a Cell from Bad Blood in 1997. So those are probably you know, it will boil down to that. All right, next is from Carl of Armada Valley. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. RMDA Valley. He asks, what do you think of the records that were broken by Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Sammy Sosa, guys like that, and other guys linked to the Peds? Do you think they should be erased from the record books? No, you know, I don't think they should be erased from the record books. You know, hitting a baseball is a very, very tough thing. You know, the home run race from 1998 when Sosa and McGuire were battling it out to see who would break Roger Maris's home run record. It was unbelievable. You know, I wasn't a baseball fan prior to that summer, but you know, it kind of brought me back to the sport. It was a great home run race. You know, you can't just blame it on the steroids. That was a year of expansion too. You know, the Diamondbacks and the Devil Rays, that was their first year. So you know, it was the pitching probably wasn't as good as a whole that year. So it has a lot to do with that. But hitting a baseball is a tough thing. Just because the guy's on steroids doesn't mean that he's not talented. Those guys were very, very talented. I personally, I've talked to guys from the Dominican Republic when Sammy Sosa was starting out, and he said that that people were so afraid to pitch to him when he was younger that they would just forfeit the game because it was an automatic home run every single time. So to say that Sosa and guys like that didn't have talent, I'd be lying if I said that. However, he also asked, do you feel like guys like Frank Thomas, Jim Thome, and Derek Jeter don't get enough credit because they're overshadowed by the mega guys like Alex Rodriguez, Barry Bonds, and guys like that? Yeah, it's definitely true. That kind of sucks. Frank Thomas isn't really a household name right now. He's a guy that never really took steroids, but he was known as the Big Hurt, and really every single time he knocked it out of the park. And he was great back in like '92, '93 that time. And yeah, it's kind of a shame. He never really quite got to the plateau that Mark McGwire did. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Jim Thome. I thought Jim Thome took steroids though. But Jeter's not really a power guy. I think Jeter gets enough credit in his own right, but for different reasons. It's because he's a Yankee, because of his looks, and Mariah Carey went out with him a couple times. So yeah. But yeah, as far as Frank Thomas goes, it's kind of a shame what happened to him. But he's one of the guys that has tried to regulate steroids in Major League Baseball. So all right, next up. Quote the Nevermore asks, what are your thoughts on Nicki Minaj? She's actually a rapper, kind of reminiscent of Little Kim, very, very feminine. I haven't seen a lot of her, but, she seems like she's got a very, very loud, charismatic personality, though. I heard someone, I was in a store and this black girl was talking on her phone, and she was saying that this girl was biting off of Little Kim, or biting off of Biggie. I think she was talking about Nicki Minaj. But yeah, I haven't seen enough of her to make a full assessment of her. I think she was on that Kanye West song with Jay-Z. So yeah, I've heard of her. Yeah, she's a pretty big name. I think Hot 97 is promoting parties and concerts with her. Yeah, so I think her album. Yeah, actually, I think her album is coming out on Black Friday. It's actually going to be called Pink Friday. I think that's the name of the album. I'm not sure about that, but. All right, the next question is from DX Fan Suck It. He asked, did you ever watch XPW and JCW? No, I never did. I know XPW was pretty big in 2001. I saw the one match with Hogan and Perfect. Just wasn't that impressed with it. So, no, I haven't seen enough of it. Next question from Mega Dark Angel. He asked, Jimmy Jacobs, what are your thoughts of the Jimmy Jacobs promos from Dragon Gate USA? He found them really touching. And, yeah, they were great. I didn't know Jacobs was in this bad of shape, actually. I mean, I thought it was pretty much just a gimmick, him going with the Age of the Fall thing, the gothic type of thing, him being a little bit out of shape. He didn't really, wasn't really dressing right. I thought that was pretty much part of the gimmick, but it's actually coming full circle now that Jacobs was kind of depressed, he wasn't working out, was taking painkillers. Every time he went into a locker room, he would ask, where are my pills? He would ask that type of stuff. But very, very touching. And I think it proves the point that it's not just drugs could bring you down, but if we have addictions, they could definitely just bring us down. And sometimes we just don't act the way we're capable of acting because sometimes we're just so addicted to something. It could just change you. It could just make you evil and make you just not give a fuck about things. And I think that's what happened to Jimmy Jacobs. But just looking at his eyes now, you can just see it in his eyes. He's in a much better state of mind. He seems like he's getting back on track. Seems like he wants to make money, wants his job back. And yeah, that was, I didn't know he was in that bad of shape, living out of his van and stuff like that. Yeah, it was pretty bad, but he's got his own apartment now. It looks like he's got everything back on track. So